The very existence and very identity of who we are depends because Gunatitanand Swami was born on this earth. જેટલો ભગવાન સ્વામિનારાયણનો પ્રતાપ એટલો જ ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામીનો પ્રતાપ. And if you really look at it in that way, the power and prowess of Gunatitanand Swami coming on this earth has so much depth and meaning. It's the door or the gateway or the pathway to Kalyan Moksha. It is the ideal of how a devotee should be. And that's why the birth of Gunatitanand Swami was not just one birth of one Satpurush. It was the birth of the Satpurush. And that's why Bhagwan Swaminarayan says, Vithavala keno visaro maru tamathi bandhela tanna ho. Shiji Maharaj and Gunatitanand Swami were impossible to separate, inseparable. That's why Shiji Maharaj says કે આખો બ્રહ્માંડ ભગવાનની આજ્ઞામાં રહે અને ભગવાન ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામીની આજ્ઞામાં રહે. You can look at that. The power, the love and the prowess of Gunatitanand Swami was incredible. That's what makes Sharad Punam important. Sankalpa tapati tapano Vati vata saminde Vah nirdhate dharanirudadir Langate naiva velam Soyam Shriman Nikhila Jagatam Antaratmavatirno Dharmam Rakshan Dishatu Kushalam Swaminarayanoyam Gunatitoksharam Brahma Bhagavan Purushotamaha Jano janannidam satyam muchyate bhavabandhanat. Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwanani Jai, Akshar Purushottam Maharajani Jai, Gunatitanand Swami Maharajani Jai, Bhagatji Maharajani Jai, Shastriji Maharajani Jai, Yogiji Maharajani Jai, Guru Hari Pramukh Swami Maharajani Jai, Guru Hari Mahanta Swami Maharajani Jai, Surat Akshardham Mahotsavni Jai. I'm so glad that all of you have held to the fact that we want to do Sabha. I'm thankful to all the saints, thankful to all the people who have sustained it, and I'm thankful to all the Karyakars, Yuvaks, Yuvatis, Kishore, Kishoris who have sustained this Sabha. I think that everything begins with a small drop. And then it turns into a stream, into a river, into a mighty ocean. Then it can evaporate and fill the skies with the clouds, and once again it rains and gives us hope. So let's focus on the birth of Gunatitanand Swami. What does this birth mean to you or me or everybody? So I was thinking in the morning when I was doing puja, that if Gunatitanand Swami hadn't been born on this earth, would there be a BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha? The very existence and very identity of who we are depends because Gunatitanand Swami was born on this earth. Would there be you and me? Would there be a wing of the Swaminarayan faith that would actually one day save the Swaminarayan Sampradaya? Would there be Shastriji Maharaj? Would there be Yogiji Maharaj? Would there be Bhagatji Maharaj? So if you look at it in a way, the birth of Bhagwan Swaminarayan is important on this earth. But as it is said in the Vachanamrut, જેટલું રાજાનું રાજ એટલું જ રાણીનું રાજ. જેટલો ભગવાન સ્વામિનારાયણનો પ્રતાપ એટલો જ ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામીનો પ્રતાપ. And if you really look at it in that way, the power and prowess of Gunatitanand Swami coming on this earth has so much depth and meaning that when we took Diksha in 1981, the whole environment was filled with, we were celebrating the birth bicentenary of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Everywhere you went, it was talk about Swaminarayan, Swaminarayan, Swaminarayan. Not just us. Every sampradaya of the Swaminarayan faith was celebrating the birth bicentenary of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. So we were not alone. For Gunatitanand Swami, we are alone. So if you look at it in a way, everybody was out there talking about Bhagwan Swaminarayan. I remember we had hardly been 2 months as a Bhagat, Tilak Bhagat. Harshad Bhai Dave, H.T. Dave, who has translated our Vachanamrut. Harshad Bhai Dave, who has written the life and philosophy of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Harshad Bhai Dave, who has written the entire Jivan Charitra of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Now mark this, okay? Harshad Bhai Dave, who has written the entire life of Gunatitanand Swami. Harshad Bhai Dave, who has written the entire life of Bhagatji Maharaj. Harshad Bhai Dave, who has written the entire life of Shastriji Maharaj. Can you find across the horizon one single person, not just scholarly, but even a person who has read, imbibed, and actually filtered the essence of all the Jivan Charitras? He has written them. And you know what he told me? In front of about 20 parshads. Harshad Bhai Dave called me and he held my hand. And he said, I'm giving you the secret of secrets. Now imagine, if you told me, I would have doubt. If I told you, you can still have a doubt. If any person who is knowledgeable tells you, you have the right to doubt. But when Harshad Bhai Dave says, gosh, it's important. And you know what he told me? I never knew the meaning of why he said that. He said, Tilak, if you are wounded and your hand begins to bleed, every drop of your blood should resonate with the words Akshar Brahm, Akshar Brahm, Akshar Brahm. After writing all the Jivan Charitras, he said Akshar Brahm is the most important feature, concept, existence, reality, element of the entire Swaminarayan Sampradaya. So I always thought about it. But today, as I was actually doing my puja, I started thinking. That, okay, Harshad Bhai Dave, but let's talk about Mahan Swami, our Guru. He told us that Shiji Maharaj is feeling lonely. Can you ever imagine Maharaj feeling lonely? We feel lonely. We sometimes are marginalized. We feel surrounded by our issues and our problems. Sometimes in the depths of our mind, in our soul, we feel lonely. Mahan Swami said that Shiji Maharaj has been feeling lonely. And he said, where is Gunatitanand Swami next to me? And that's why Mahan Swami arranged for the other murti of Gunatitanand Swami. And that's why he does worship and puja of Akshar Purushottam every day. Pramukh Swami, anything you did or say, Pramukh Swami knew, whether he's talking about a subject, whether he's creating friends, whether he's talking with diplomats, whether he's talking with ministers, whether he's talking with prime ministers, whether he's reaching out to a Haribhakta, whether he's doing Padrami. You say it, Pramukh Swami was a master at it. And yet, all his life, he just did one thing, is to build temples for Akshar Purushottam. Imagine he could have done so many. If Pramukh Swami sat in the corner, he would have written Shastra after Shastra. But all his life, what did he do is to build temples for Akshar Purushottam. So something tells me that Akshar Brahm is important. If Shiji Maharaj could feel lonely without him, If Harshad Bhai tells me that every drop of your blood should resonate with Akshabram and called it the secret of secrets, if Pramukh Swami all his life where he could have done so many things, so many people have told Bapa, if you became the Prime Minister of India, India would be running in a different form. And how many times I've gone to our Prime Minister and there's never been once he has not remembered that if Pramukh Swami was here physically. He said, how many times I think that at night Pramukh Swami should give me darshan. Ke raate mane swapnama Pramukh Swami darshan de. So I wanted to tell you, Shastriji Maharaj, as you look at him, he said, Aksha Purushottam mate mundavyuં છે. He left Vadtal because of what? Gunatitanand Swami. He faced death because of what? He faced defiance because of what? He was so comfortable in Vadtal, he was worshipped like a Sadguru. And he walked out penniless, followerless. And he slept till his last breath in a mud hut. બાપાએ મને ઘણી વાર કીધું હતું કે શાસ્ત્રીજી મહારાજ આખી જિંદગી માટીના ઝૂંપડામાં રહ્યા અને આપણી માટે મહેલ બાંધ્યા. The mandirs he built were glorious while he lived in Sarangpur in a mud hut. So Shastriji Maharaj gave up everything he had for whom? Gunatitanand Swami. Bhagatji Maharaj was excommunicated. For who? Gunatitanand Swami. In the presence of Gunatitanand Swami. That's the oddest thing. Gunatitanand Swami is the Mahant of Junagadh. And Junagadh Mandir takes a decision to excommunicate Bhagatji Maharaj. Why? Because he sings praises of Gunatitanand Swami. Can you get a greater paradox? Because I love you so much, you shun and reject me. And Bhagatji Maharaj never had a thought that Gunatitanand Swami is the Mahant. Why can't he prevail upon everybody else and say, hey, come on, this is Bhagatji. Let him in, guys. No, all his life. Bhagatji Maharaj was ready to be excommunicated because of Gunatitanand Swami, for Gunatitanand. There has to be something important in his birth. And then comes Gunatitanand Swami. And he never minced words. Nobody was so blatantly honest like Gunatitanand Swami. You know, there were some people discussing whether Akshabram Gunatitanand Swami kevai ke na kevai. Gunatitanand Swami goes up to them. He said, "Bhai, mara vachane tu mane Akshabram man, and bijo koi hase, tu fodi lais." Gunatitanand Swami says that, believe me to be Akshabram. If there's another Akshabram, I will look after him. I will take care of him. And Gunatitanand Swami was never highlighted in the times of Bhagwan Swaminarayan. And yet, the last conversation that Shiji Maharaj had was with whom? Gunatitanand Swami. There was Muktanand Swami, there's Gopanand Swami, there's Brahmanand Swami, there's Nityanand Swami. The who's who, the galaxy of Paramhansis. And yet, Shiji Maharaj singles out Gunatitanand Swami. Mithavala kemo visaro maru tamathi bandhela tannaho. That we are one to such an extent that just as the body and soul find it difficult to separate, Shiji Maharaj and Gunatitanand Swami were impossible to separate, inseparable. And that's why Bhagwan Swaminarayan says that till now everybody were in the Agna of Shiji Maharaj. And at the gate of Vadtal, when Shiji Maharaj just bumps into Gunatitanand Swami, and Gunatitanand Swami is not possessing anything. He has about 18 godalis on his mattresses, on his shoulder. He had been washing for the ill sadhus. And Shiji Maharaj looks at him and Shiji Maharaj gets stuck. And then Shiji Maharaj says, Ke Sadhuram agna apo tame jaiye. Shiji Maharaj begs leave of Gunatitanand Swami. If you allow me, I can go. And then all the other sevaks around Shiji Maharaj who did not know the Mahima of Gunatitanand Swami, they say, but Maharaj, who is this that you are asking Agya from? That's when Shiji Maharaj says that jem saapne sansama pakdi rakhe, em a sadhuye mari murti ne trane avasthama pakdi rakhi છે. There were sadhus who were scholars, there were sadhus who were talented like Brahmanand. There were sadhus who were full of saintliness like Muktanand Swami. There were sadhus who were full of Aishwarya like Gopalan Swami. But none of them held the murti of Shiji Maharaj in three avasthas. That's why Shiji Maharaj says કે આખો બ્રહ્માંડ ભગવાનની આજ્ઞામાં રહે અને ભગવાન ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામીની આજ્ઞામાં રહે. You can look at that. The power, the love and the prowess of Gunatitanand Swami was incredible. That's what makes Sharad Punam important. It's not just your identity, it's not just the identity of BAPS Swaminarayan Sanstha, it's the identity of the Swaminarayan Sampradaya. It's the door or the gateway or the pathway to Kalyan Moksha. It is the ideal of how a devotee should be. And that's why the birth of Gunatitanand Swami was not just one birth of one Satpurush, it was the birth of the Satpurush. To simplify Gunatitanand Swami and make him more relevant for our lives, let's just explore three simple ideas of Gunatitanand Swami's life. First, let me simplify it very simple. Everything that he did right from his birth to his old age, everything that he did were factual. You know what happens when you are a spiritual leader? You talk about things which nobody understands, so you actually start talking about things that you don't understand. Think about it, so many philosophers. It's like, when one man went to ask Jai Krishnamurti, a very big philosopher, a thinker, a great intellectual. The man goes to ask Jai Krishnamurti and says that, should I get married? Jai Krishnamurti says, don't. Don't take me wrong, if you're married, be happy. But he says, don't. He said, why? He said, if you don't get married to the most beautiful woman on this earth, your mind will go elsewhere. So this guy was wise. He said, what if I do get married to the most beautiful woman on this earth? Then he says, she will go elsewhere. He said, your marriage will never be comfortable because of desires. Either or. So this man writes that he convinced me intellectually, but I still got married. There's a big difference between factual and intellectual and actual. You can be intellectual, you might not be factual. And you can be factual, you can't be actual, it doesn't relate to you. Gunatitanand Swami was first absolutely factual. If you remember his incident that when he went down to the mandir and started doing bhajan bhakti, his father came and got hold of him by the scruff of the neck and took him back home and said, hey, childhood is not the age to do bhajan bhakti. He said, when should I do it? He said, once you get old age is the age for bhajan bhakti. So little Murji Bhagat, little Gunatitanand Swami, he leaves home and then goes to every place where the elderly and the elderly, there were no old age homes there, every home was old age. So he went from home to home and saw what the elderly and the old age people were doing. Either they were sleeping or snoring, or they were just talking about the worldly things and they were talking ill. So everywhere he went, whether it was the village square or somebody's house or a simple place or the shop, anywhere he went, he just found elderly people just whiling time away, doing nothing. And after a full days of fact-finding, he comes home and he tells Dad, you're wrong. I saw so many elderly people and old age people and none of them were worshipping God. I believe that the time to worship God is now. His father did not have anything to say. So as Gunatitanand Swami continued, and as he spoke all his life, everything that he said was based upon what? Fact upon fact upon fact. It was factual. But more important, I wanted to make sure, more important, that whatever factual knowledge that he brought in, Gunatitanand Swami's knowledge was also supported by his own experience, actual. He never just relied on intellectual. We remember that Gunatitanand Swami as a saint, he was not a scholarly saint. So whenever there was debate in times of Bhagwan Swaminarayan would send who? Nityanand Swami. And Nityanand Swami was quite hefty. So in one cart, Nityanand Swami would sit. And in 3 carts behind him will be all the scriptures. So imagine, Nityanand Swami will go for the debates. Sometimes Muktanand Swami went for debates. Sometimes Brahmanand Swami went for debates. But Nityanand Swami, Brahmanand Swami or Muktanand Swami were always the ones who went for debates. Gunatitanand Swami never did. Once it so happened in Ahmedabad, perhaps all the 3 Paramahamsas must have been busy. So you have the extras, you know that? The super subs. No, the super subs who just walk in for the last 10 minutes and score a couple of goals and win. So Gunatitanand Swami went as a super sub. And he went to Ahmedabad. And all the Vedant and Vedantis, were firing Sanskrit sloks after sloks. And they were all discussing that Bhagwan nu tattva aaj hai, there are 10 tattva, 11 tattva, 20 tattva, 23 tattva, 26 tattva. And 27 Bhagwan nu hai, the 27th is God. And the power of God is such that only Akshar Brahm is behind or after Bhagwan Swaminarayan or Bhagwan. And all these discussions were going on. And then Gunatitanand Swami asked simple, what are the qualities of Brahma? What are the qualities of Brahma? Again the Panditas, they went into this another flurry of intellectual, sloks after sloks, that he is omnipresent and he is powerful, he can be anywhere. And then Gunatitanand Swami very quietly says, they were all waiting for Gunatitanand Swami to answer in Sanskrit. Gunatitanand Swami says that if you are knowledgeable and if you are experienced, can you enter that pillar? He said, what? What do you mean enter the pillar? Gunatitanand said, if you are knowledgeable, if you know the tattva of God, if you know the tattva of Brahma, can you enter that pillar? And everybody started laughing. And then Gunatitanand Swami enters the pillar. And the pillar starts shaking. The whole Haveli starts shaking. And all the intellectuals run away from the actual. Gunatitanand Swami was the actual. Of course, his knowledge was based on facts. It's factual. But more importantly, everything he did was actual. He didn't preach about humility, but they found him sweeping the floor of the temple. And that's when the Mahant felt that, wow, what a Mahant. Seva karete Mahant. It was not just a beautiful proverb. It was actually actual. That's what made Gunatitanand Swami different as a spiritual leader. And the third thing, everything that he based upon was spiritual. Of course, his knowledge was factual, it was actually actual, but it's also spiritual. He always gave us a spiritual perspective to life. He says in one of the vatos, જેટલો બીજાના દોષ જોવાનો આગ્રહ છે એવો પોતાના દોષ જોવાનો હોય. The way we enjoy in finding faults with others, if we focus on finding our faults. જેટલો બીજાને સમજાવવાનો આગ્રહ છે એટલો પોતાને સમજવાનો હોય. I think I'm giving you a secret to have a happy ever after life. જેટલો બીજાને સમજાવવાનો આગ્રહ છે એટલો પોતાને સમજવાનો હોય. The zeal that you have to explain to others, if you have the same and similar zeal to understand or explain to yourself, Gunatitanand Swami says, kai prashna rahe જ નહીં. You would be free of all challenges. He gives a spiritual dimension of introspection in everything that he did. In one of his other vaat, he says very simple, જ્યારે દુઃખ થાય, when you are hurt, pained, and when you suffer, પોતા કરતા દુખિયાનો વિચાર કરવો તો દુઃખ રહેશે જ નહીં. Whenever you are suffering, whenever you are miserable, whenever you feel hurt, whenever you are low, think of others who are in deeper or more dire situations, and your pain will be relieved. There's a saying in English, okay, I was in the blues because I had no shoes until I met a man in the street who had no feet. If you understand that inside your life there is another way of looking at things. Gunatitanand Swami was not just factual, not just actual, but his all ideas were spiritual. Whatever he taught us. So first, the most important thing that Gunatitanand Swami taught us was open-mindedness. And what do I mean by open-mindedness? Base your decisions on facts. First, gather your facts. Most of our decisions are emotional. We are not basing them on facts. Then, after having factual information, then how it relates to you, generate just the actual. Not all the facts may relate to you. Somebody climbed Mount Everest without oxygen. Wonderful fact. But you keep taking a lift every now and then. You're panting like... Samjhi kya na? So it's not actual for you. It's a fact, which can remain a fact, but don't allow it to control or hijack your life. And the third thing, whatever happens to you, try and find a spiritual outlook. The moment you try and find a spiritual outlook, you'll find out that the worst things that have happened to you turn out to be the best things or the blessings in disguise. You found it difficult, or maybe you were challenged, or wherever you were staying, whether in England or America or India, and suddenly there were issues, and suddenly those issues catapulted you to UAE. Stop being grumpy, smile. At least you've not been stabbed. At least you've not been kicked. I'm trying to say, if you look at your life and try and find the most in your life which is before you, that is a spiritual outlook. This mandir has happened because 1,000 people said no to me. Some of the biggest sadhus and some of the biggest leaders of our own sampradaya. And that's what gave me the impetus to do it, because Pramukh Swami had said it. And that's what's given me the complete understanding that the world runs by Pramukh Swami's words. Nah, they run by his whispers. The world runs not just by Pramukh Swami's words, they run by Mahan Swami's whispers. He doesn't speak much, but his whisper is enough. હું તમને હકીકત કહું છું. It taught me that perhaps you don't need the world. If you got your Satpurush, if you have your faith, if you have your strength and belief, the whole world will conspire to help you. This is the symbol. So first, Gunatitanand Swami teaches us to be open-minded. Base your decisions on facts, on relevance to you, and spiritual outlook, number one. The second thing Gunatitanand Swami was, he was also open-hearted. આ ત્રણ શબ્દ યાદ રાખજો. Open-minded, he was open-hearted. To such an extent that the smallest of the small, for the smallest thing, could enter his heart. Because he was Aksha Brahm. Sometimes when you go so higher up, so difficult to reach the top of the great, that means the top of the top person. But for Gunatitanand Swami, the smallest of the small with the smallest seva in the smallest way for the smallest amount of time could enter his heart and win his blessings. So open-hearted. We all know the story of Baudin. He met Gunatitanand Swami as a stranger. He himself was reluctant to give the wood. He didn't come samethi ke lo. It was his mother who said, ke Baudin, you go, Olya Purushe, go and give whatever wood we have cut, give it to him, and that will bring. And then he was on the verge of asking for money. And his mom explained to him, beta, mota sant pase, paisa na mangai, dua mangai. Go and ask for blessings. How can you ask for blessings from an old sadhu who is freezing, who has begged to you for a bunch of wood, and who is trying to keep himself warm just because of a small fire, what can that sadhu give you? But look at the image of Gunatitanand Swami at that time, and Baudin walks, and then he's about to ask for money. And that the words of his mother comes, he just ask for blessings, and then Gunatitanand Swami says, Tari janma janamni taad udse. He went and became the minister of the Nawab of Junagadh, and now there stands a college in his name after 200 years. Can you imagine what the smallest of the small, he was a kid, and the smallest seva for the smallest time being in a strange situation. And I don't think Baudin ever met Gunatitanand Swami again. He was open-hearted. Gunatitanand Swami was open-hearted. Even anybody could enter. And then comes the biggest of the big, of the biggest of the big. So the smallest seva, but the worst insult of the biggest of the biggest of the big and the biggest. Ugha khuman. He's a king in his own right. His order was the written law. And Ugha khuman not just insults, but he beats up, brutally beats up. All the sadhus were wounded, bleeding, nursing their wounds. And then Gunatitanand Swami finds out. And Gunatitanand Swami says, that let us pray that he is blessed with a son. So imagine, those who served him entered his heart, and those who opposed him entered his heart. Can you find a spiritual leader so open-hearted that everybody, he had a heart wherein the whole world could live? So if tonight you go back, you have to go back with the idea that Gunatitanand Swami was open-minded. That's what he has taught all of us to be. Gunatitanand Swami was open-hearted. There should be space in your heart for everybody. Don't reach out to the world. Start with your own family. Some would be obedient, some won't. Some would challenge you. Don't feel threatened. Some would deride you, deride you. Some would divide you. All sorts of people will come into your life, but if you have an open-hearted approach, give space to each one of them. Give space. Gunatitanand Swami was such a saint that even Raghuvirji Maharaj, after he lost his wife, there was a burning desire to get married again, but because he was an acharya, it was not appropriate spiritually. And then he tells Gunatitanand Swami says, Tirthvasi thaina aavo. So even in the desire of an acharya, who is supposed to be in the lineage of Bhagwan Swaminarayan, Gunatitanand Swami had the ability to purify him. So imagine, not only was he open-minded, he was open-hearted. And the last, perhaps you are hearing this word for the first time. It's a word that I've created. He was open-souled. You're probably thinking, is there such a word as open-souled? Well, words don't define reality. Reality are described by words. There is nothing sacrosanct for words. In this digital age, we've already ruined English. Okay? And the kids, as they master the digital age, they'll completely revamp English. Gunatitanand Swami was open-souled. What do I mean by open-souled? He was so pure that when you looked at him, you could not see the world, you could only see God. There was no distance, no distraction, no diffusion, no division, no differentiation. The moment anybody connected to Gunatitanand Swami, it was a direct connection with Bhagwan Swaminarayan. When somebody looks into our soul, it's filled with maya, it's filled with desire, it's filled with vasna. But Gunatitanand Swami was completely open-souled, meaning anybody who had the ability to connect to Gunatitanand Swami was directly connected to Bhagwan Swaminarayan. And that's one of the reasons that Gunatitanand Swami was considered and still is worshipped, and the lineage of Gunatit Satpurush, they are the connection to God. If there is any way to God, it is through them. If you think it's through the scriptures, you're mistaken. If you think it's through your tap, you're mistaken. If you think it's through your niyam dharam, they are all mediums, they help, they are the fences, but they are not the crops or the product. Gunatitanand Swami is the only medium. People have come to me and said, oh, then if in the absence of Gunatitanand Swami, nobody can get Kalyan of Sriji Maharaj straight away. I say, yeah, Maharaj will give them another birth and then connect it to Gunatitanand Swami and then go up. Come on. It's like playing snakes and ladders. You can only go one way, and that is Gunatitanand Swami. So his birth is very important for our own self-emancipation. It's not possible without Satpurush. Satpurush is the way, and he is the medium. That's why I would always say that he was open-souled. Anybody who connected to Gunatitanand Swami for any reason whatsoever. We all know the story of Valera varu. And I don't want to keep repeating it, but let me tell you. Valera varu had taken to banditry. He had become a robber because of his dispute with his brother, Siddhi Varu. And his brother had wrongfully taken his land and property and his money. He wasn't giving up. And then he decided that I'll make my ends meet through the wrong way. So he would kill, he would brutally loot, he would, defeat, and he will, ransack and pillage villages and everything. His name became a terror, and when his men rounded up Gunatitanand Swami, but they had nothing. And I think that was the most botched up robbery that you can ever imagine. So they rounded up Gunatitanand Swami and all the Haribhaktas, and they took them to Valera varu. And Valera varu, he despised sadhus. He was about to execute or, hurt them. And that's when he meets Gunatitanand Swami, and Gunatitanand Swami says, what's happened to you? And then he explains, he says, I don't want to do this. I know it's wrong. But what can I do? My brother has cheated me, and until I get my share back, I'm going to continue doing this. At the end of the day, he was so illiterate. Gunatitanand Swami says, after 7 days, you're going to get your wealth back. He said, if I do, I'll change my ways. And he didn't even know how to count 7. Gunatitanand Swami ties 7 knots on a rope. Imagine a person who is so wayward. Imagine a person who doesn't understand the ways of the world as well. Gunatitanand Swami ties 7 knots on a rope. And he says, every sunrise, open 1 knot. The day you open the 7th knot, your brother will come and give. And we'll settle the dispute. So he says, can we open the first now? This is Valera varu. Ahmedabadiya said, typical. He was one day less. So Gunatitanand Swami opens the first knot, and he says, you wait for 6 mornings and then open for the next 6 mornings. On the 7th morning, his brother has a change of heart. He comes and gives his land back and gives him 7,000 rupees. Valera varu, he decides it's because of Gunatitanand Swami this has happened, not because of my terror, not because of my horror. It's because of Gunatitanand Swami. He goes to Junagadh with 2,000 rupees. And then he empties that and he says, Swamiji, because you gave me your promise and word, this has happened. And then he tells Gunatitanand Swami, now this is what I want to say, open-souled. He tells Gunatitanand Swami that show me your home. And Gunatitanand Swami shows him the Haveli and says, this is where I live. He says, no, show me the place where you really live. Actual, not intellectual, and not factual. You understand? Actual. And then Gunatitanand Swami looks at him and he goes into Samadhi. He sees Sriji Maharaj, he sees Akshardham, and he comes back a completely changed man. Open-souled means anybody who comes into contact of Gunatitanand Swami anyhow, whether to rob him, whether to hurt him, whether to hate him, whether to serve him, whether to love him, whether to follow him, any which way, you win. We are in a sampradaya, we are in a mandad, We belong to the BAPS Swaminarayan Sampradaya, where any which way we win. That's the power of the Gunatit Satpurush. So if somebody asks you that why Sharad Punam is so important, you have to say, because it makes me open-minded, it makes me open-hearted, and it creates an open-souled environment. We are specially blessed, and now I realize why Harshad by the way always told me that if you are wounded, he didn't say in a great day or great time, if somebody hurts you, if somebody hates you, and if you are bleeding, even every drop of our blood should resonate with Akshar Brahm, Akshar Brahm, Akshar Brahm. And that's what makes this day so special. And I also want to tell you, if you want to combine the actual, the intellectual and the spiritual, you can. When we say it every day in our Ashtak, Brahmanda Koti Dharam. You understand? Roma Vivare. That on your every pore, Gunatitanand Swami's every pore, Anand Koti Brahmanda are flying around. You might actually ask me, the Swami, is that really true? Let me end with the fact that it is. If you are a simple human being, you're a simple human being. If you take a pin, on a pin head, science tells us there are 5 million hydrogen atoms. Ketla? Let's talk about just billions. Okay, billions of hydrogen atoms. Hydrogen atoms ma su hoy? Electrons hoy? And electrons su betha che am hath pani ke fare che. What are they doing? Come on. They are forces. And inside that electrons, there are about 200 subatomic particles, which you know as quarks, prequarks, mesons, gluons. I don't want to bore you with all the facts and figures. We've already left that. So if 5 million hydrogen atoms with all the electrons are just on a pinhead, our pore is as large as a pinhead. So even around you, ફરે છે ને તો પછી ગુણાતીતાનંદ સ્વામીને ત્યાં ફરે એમાં શું શંકા કરો છો? Come on. If you're ready to believe that around our pores 5 million atoms and electrons are buzzing around everywhere, then the entire Brahmand is as small as just an atom in front of Gunatitanand Swami. That's how powerful and big Akshar Brahm is. And we are glad that we have met the Pragat Swarup of Akshar Brahm Gunatitanand Swami in the form of Mahan Swami. And we are glad that whatever he says, not just his words, even his whispers, define our world. So remember these 3 things: open-minded, be factual, actual and spiritual. Be open-hearted. Allow the smallest things of the smallest person to enter your heart, and do not worry about the biggest and the largest insults. Give space to all. And connect to Maharaj and Swami. You will connect straight to Bhagwan Swaminarayan. I think this is the way we should celebrate Sharad Purnima, not just by dancing and doing garbas. Carry on. Let the atoms spin around you. Shri Swaminarayan Bhagwan Jai.
Thank you for joining us today and listening with such devotion. Bhagwan Swaminarayan has taught us the power of listening to Katha. It purifies our mind and brings us closer to God. So if this Katha helped you, give it a like, subscribe for more, and share it with someone you care about. Until next time, Jai Swaminarayan.